For 5-year-old Gordon and 12-year-old Danny, it would be a wonderful week-long adventure, a voyage of discovery. They would visit those special places Dan knew about, where fascinating wildlife might be found. The days were bright and warm as they knifed their way through the cool, clear waters of Georgian Bay. Time to go ashore and look around a bit. Kids are naturally curious, Dan tells us, so if you can expose them to nature at an early age, it sticks with them and becomes a very important part of their lives. On this tranquil summer day, their first discovery was great blue herons in the trees near the shore. A little farther inland, they came across a shallow pond and one of the biggest bullfrogs the boys had ever seen. Moments later, Danny spotted another, noisier bullfrog. Gordon wanted to get closer, but hesitated. Then he found something more his own size, a small green frog. Whoops. More experienced now at frog chasing, Gordon turned his attention again to the big fellow. His curiosity aroused, Gordon began to tickle the frog with a weed. Much to Gordon's delight, the frog was in a playful mood. For Gordon, holding a turtle in his hands, if only for a moment, was something quite special. Up close, eyeing each other, Gordon felt as if he'd made a new friend. Then it was time for a gymnastic demonstration. An amazing feat of turtle prowess. But the patient turtle finally had enough of the boys and their lively curiosity. Oh, it was a great adventure for them, Dan tells us. The more they saw and heard, the more they wanted to go on and on, from one place to another, moving closer and closer to nature. The Gibson boys had grown up with Ontario's enchanting Algonquin Park as their summer home, with frequent trips there each fall and spring, for as long as they could remember. learned to identify birds, seen or unseen, often by their calls alone. The morning warbler, and the yellowthroat. No matter how many times you visit a marsh, lake, or river, it's always different, Dan would tell them. Nature is always growing and changing, and you can grow and change with it. For Dan, these were often working trips, recording Algonquin songsters, even the common red-winged blackbird. It seemed that wherever you went in the park, sooner or later you came across a loon, or a family of loons, or you heard their haunting call in the distance. When he was young, Dan had experience as a camp counselor, and he wanted to pass on this experience and all his knowledge of nature and wildlife to his sons. At a portage, he said, everyone has to do his bit, carry his weight. I never babied them, he went on. I just loaded them up and off we went. They loved fishing, especially for smallmouth black bass. They learned how to make a fire in the wilderness and cook the fish they caught. Once in a while, we came across a black bear, or it came across us. I never could figure out who was more surprised, the bear or the boys. Bears, like kids, are naturally shy and don't give people much trouble unless you start feeding them. Then they might come and sit on your doorstep. There was always some animal around the Gibson cottage on Canoe Lake. They had a feeding tray full of birdseed, which attracted, among others, numerous lively chipmunks. Gordon would watch the chippies play and feed for hours at a time. And then there were the colorful Toronto blue jays. Rescued from a damaged nest in Toronto, the blue jays were raised by the Gibsons and brought here just about the time they were ready to fly. The boys fed them dog food with an eyedropper and more or less took responsibility for them. One summer, a friend of Dan's gave him a pet baby crow. The boys wanted to make a film of their own about the hilarious adventures of the crow and the chipmunk. Don't go out and try to identify 100 birds in one summer, Dan told the boys. Go slowly, and you'll learn an awful lot more. It was a good idea, and it worked wonders. Each summer, Dan arranged for the boys to get to know one or two species on a day-to-day basis. The most wonderful summer of all was the year of the goslings. Dan got the baby geese, hatched in an incubator from a nature sanctuary, when they were 1 week old. He wanted to document the phenomenon of imprinting, where wildlife becomes attached to the only family it knows. In this case, the Gibson family. For the record, the boy's mother, Helen, snapped a picture of Rub-a-Dub-Dub, a boy in a tub, Danny surrounded by 1-month-old geese. Gordon took charge of flying lessons. Just do what I do, he told the 3 Canada geese. Well, actually, there was a mix-up in the eggs, and one of the goslings turned out to be an oriental swan goose, but it was all in the family. Then one day, the 2-month-old geese were off and flying. Or almost. Well, it was a good try. This time, however, all 3 got airborne. Then they glided to a smooth stop like expert water skiers. Canoe Lake is one of the few lakes in Algonquin Park where cottagers are allowed, and the three geese flying in formation behind the Gibson boat were the talk of the lake that summer. For the boys, it was a summer they would never forget. We did prove, Dan says, that when humans raise birds from an early age, they'll follow you wherever you go. If you leave them or try to hide from them, they'll find you. They followed us to parties around the lake, just flew in and joined the other guests. That fall, we took them to Toronto Island, waved goodbye, and let them join the large flock of geese that winters there. Gordon was about 10 the year one of the forest rangers gave the Gibsons an orphaned raccoon. That summer, Gordon and the raccoon were inseparable. Raccoons make wonderful pets, but they're very playful and can get into a lot of mischief. Raccoons are nocturnal feeders, but living with humans, they take on reverse habits, feeding by day and sleeping by night, usually in a warm cabin. The chipmunks were still around, watching the raccoon do a high wire act on a log railing, and there were squirrels, too. Because of his size, the raccoon had more or less taken over the feeding tray. The peanuts were disappearing at an alarming rate, and the raccoon was concerned. Some days, Gordon and the raccoon would canoe along the shore of the lake, stopping at a birdhouse to observe the tree swallows. Gordon, now in his 20s, worked as a guide at camps in Algonquin Park, and today dreams about getting into nature photography himself. His brother Danny guided for several years, then went into forestry as a firefighter. He now builds custom wood canvas canoes for a living. When you grow with nature, their father told them, it rubs off. It changes you forever.